Have you ever wondered, can a hug come from the most unexpected places? We often think of a hug as warm arms wrapped around us, a gentle touch, or a comforting embrace. But could there be other kinds of hugs we've never noticed? A hug doesn't always have to be physical. It can be a feeling that fills your heart with warmth, a quiet shelter in the middle of a storm, or an unspoken understanding that needs no words. Welcome to Moonlitwest, where the warmest stories are told under the moonlight and woven into gentle dreams. Let's embark on a journey to discover small wonders, simple yet profound lessons, and the different ways each heart finds love. Are you ready to step into a world of magical stories? Don't forget to like and subscribe to help Moonlitwest reach 135 subscribers, and let's spread the warmth together. The Everhugs forest stretched out like a soft green carpet, with tall trees intertwining to form a natural canopy, filtering the gentle sunlight that cascaded onto the ground covered in dry leaves. The air here was always filled with warmth from embraces, from affectionate touches shared among all the creatures. In this forest lived a small hedgehog named Quilly. Quilly was a tiny creature, his entire body covered in sharp spines, yet his heart was softer and warmer than anything else. He loved the crisp mornings when the dew still clung to the leaves, and he adored the radiant afternoons when the golden sunlight bathed the entire forest. But more than anything, Quilly had one burning desire, a warm embrace. He often silently observed the friends around him. Bunny Boo, the little white rabbit with long ears, nestled in her mother's arms every night, listening to soothing bedtime stories before drifting off to sleep. Fuzzle, the mischievous brown squirrel, always clung tightly to his siblings at night, the three of them curling into a soft, furry ball atop a high branch. And then there was Cubby, the round little bear cub, who never left his mother's side. Every step Cubby took was accompanied by a reassuring touch, a strong embrace to lean on when he was tired. Watching these scenes made Quilly's heart ache. He had never been hugged by anyone. The spines on his back, though a natural part of him, had unintentionally become a barrier between him and the world. A single touch, and his sharp quills would make others flinch and pull away. But Quilly refused to believe that he would be alone forever. One afternoon, as the setting sun cast a warm orange glow over the forest, he decided to try. He scampered over to Bunny Boo, who was joyfully playing hide and seek among the bushes. Quilly carefully stepped closer, trying his best not to rustle the dry leaves beneath his feet. Bunny Boo was hiding behind a large tree trunk, her ears perked up as she listened for any movement around her. "Boo, can I play with you?" Quilly asked, his voice filled with excitement. Bunny Boo turned around, her round eyes lighting up. "Of course, Quilly, quick, go hide. I'll count to 10. Quilly beamed and hurried to find a hiding spot behind a nearby bush. But before he could settle in, Bunny Boo suddenly dashed past him, accidentally brushing against the spines on his back. "Ouch!" Bunny Boo yelped, jumping back slightly, her eyes blinking in surprise. "Quilly, you poked me?" Quilly froze. He hadn't meant to. Bunny Boo looked down at her soft, white belly fur, where there was a tiny mark from the touch. Luckily, it wasn't a wound, but there was a hint of hesitation in her gaze. She smiled at Quilly, but her steps had shifted slightly backward. "It's okay, Quilly," Bunny Boo reassured him, her voice still gentle, but no longer as carefree as before. "We can still play, but maybe you should stand a little farther away." Her words were kind, but they cut deep into Quilly's heart. He nodded, forcing a smile, then quietly turned and walked away. As night fell, Quilly curled up in his tiny nest beneath the old oak tree. The evening wind rustled through the trees, carrying the sweet scent of wildflowers, but it couldn't soothe the sadness lingering in his heart. "Maybe no one wants to hug me," Quilly thought to himself, his eyes sorrowfully gazing up at the starry sky, and at that moment, he made the most important decision of his life. If no one could hug him, then he would set out to find a hug of his own, a warm embrace that wouldn't hurt anyone. The sun rose behind the towering trees of Everhug's forest, casting its golden rays over the soft leaf-covered ground. The morning dew sparkled on the leaves like tiny gems, reflecting the light in a peaceful glow. A gentle breeze swayed the branches, making the whole forest whisper a delicate melody. Quilly walked along a small path blanketed in dry leaves, his heart brimming with hope. Today, he was determined to find a hug of his own. He believed that somewhere in this vast forest, there had to be someone willing to embrace him without fearing his sharp spines. Laughter echoed from a nearby tree branch. Quilly looked up and spotted Fuzzle, the lively little squirrel with sleek brown fur, leaping from branch to branch with a large acorn in his mouth. Fuzzle was the most agile creature in the forest, never staying still for long. He was always busy darting around, gathering acorns, and stashing them away in tiny hollows of the old oak tree. "Fuzzle," Quilly called up eagerly, "can you help me with something?" Fuzzle paused midair in a jump, his tiny feet hovering for a split second before he landed gracefully. His dark, twinkling eyes sparkled with mischief. "Oh, Quilly, you came at the perfect time. I need an extra pair of hands to help me gather acorns." Quilly blinked, then smiled softly. What did collecting acorns have to do with finding a hug? But maybe this was a chance to get closer to Fuzzle. He quickly nodded. "Just tell me what to do." Fuzzle excitedly jumped down to a lower branch, using his tiny paws to roll an acorn down to the ground. "All you need to do is pick them up and stack them neatly over there." Quilly eagerly stepped forward, carefully bending down to pick up a round, plump acorn, but the moment he touched it, something felt off. The acorn didn't stay in Quilly's hands for long. The spines on his back accidentally brushed against it, causing it to get stuck between the sharp quills. Quilly tried to gently pull it off, but the stubborn acorn clung tightly to his stiff spines. "Whoa, hold still. Let me help." Fuzzle chuckled, hopping over to Quilly and using his nimble little paws to tug at the acorn. But no matter how hard he tried, Quilly's rigid quills wouldn't let go of it so easily. Fuzzle giggled, completely unbothered. "Ha ha, Quilly, you're like a walking acorn basket." Quilly laughed along, but deep down, he felt a pang of disappointment. He had hoped that Fuzzle's fluffy tail would be thick enough to hug him, but instead, he couldn't even help with a simple task without causing trouble. His head lowered slightly, and he slowly stepped back. "Sorry, I guess I'm not very good at collecting acorns." Fuzzle gave a kind smile, swishing his long tail. "That's okay, Quilly. Everyone has their own strengths. You're really cute, but I think you might be better suited for something else." Fuzzle's words weren't meant to be discouraging, but Quilly's little heart still clenched slightly. He forced a smile, thanked Fuzzle, and quietly walked away. The dry leaves under his feet rustled with every heavy step. Quilly had truly believed this time would be different, that he could finally find someone who could embrace him. But it seemed that even helping a friend was difficult when he was covered in sharp spines. He gazed up at the vast blue sky, where the white clouds drifted aimlessly, unbothered by anything. Would there ever be someone who could hug him? He didn't know, but Quilly refused to give up. He believed that somewhere in this forest, a hug was waiting for him, one that he could give without hurting anyone. And if you'd like to support Quilly on his journey, don't forget to like and subscribe to Moonlitwest. Help us reach 135 subscribers so we can continue bringing you more heartwarming stories. The sun gradually sank behind the towering trees, casting a warm golden-orange glow over Everhug's forest. Quilly sat curled up beneath an old oak tree, watching the leaves sway gently in the cool evening breeze. Today had been a long day. He had tried to find a hug from Fuzzle, but ended up ruining his friend's game instead. Even though Fuzzle wasn't upset, Quilly still felt an emptiness inside. He let out a quiet sigh when suddenly a deep yet cheerful voice called out from behind him. "Quilly, what are you doing here?" It was Cubby. The round little bear cub with thick, fluffy fur came trotting over, his short legs crunching the dry leaves beneath him. Cubby was one of the happiest creatures in the forest, always carrying a bright smile on his face. Quilly tilted his head slightly, forcing a small smile. "Oh, I was just thinking about something." Cubby tilted his own head, his round eyes twinkling with curiosity. "Thinking about what? If it's food, I've got some really tasty berries to share." Quilly let out a small chuckle, feeling a little lighter inside. He shook his head. "Not food. I was just wondering if there's anyone who could hug me without getting poked by my spines." Cubby blinked a few times, then suddenly burst into hearty laughter. "Oh, that's easy. My fur is super thick. I bet your spines wouldn't even tickle me. Hey, why don't you come sleep over at my place tonight? My mom always says the best sleep comes from cuddling up nice and close." Quilly's eyes widened. A hug? A warm sleep nestled with the bear family? Maybe. This was the answer he had been searching for. He quickly nodded. "Really? I can sleep over with you." Cubby grinned from ear to ear. "Of course. Come on. My mom will be so happy to meet you." Both quickly made their way to the bear's den, where Cubby and his family lived. The bear family's den was much warmer than Quilly had imagined. Soft moss spread across the ground like a cozy carpet, while golden dry leaves were neatly stacked in a corner as sleeping spots. Mama Bear, a large yet gentle bear, looked at Quilly with warm eyes as Cubby excitedly introduced him. "Mom, this is Quilly. He's going to sleep with us tonight." Mama Bear nodded kindly. "Welcome, Quilly. Everyone is welcome here. It's a cold night, and sleeping together will keep us much warmer." Quilly's heart swelled with happiness. This was exactly what he had longed for, a place where he could feel warmth and love. He nestled between Cubby and Mama Bear, feeling the softness of their fur wrap around him. He closed his eyes slightly, thinking to himself, "Oh, finally, I'm about to have a real hug." But as the night deepened, a small problem began to arise. Every time Quilly shifted, even just a little, the sharp spines on his back accidentally poked against Mama Bear's fur. At first, Mama Bear simply furrowed her brow slightly, then continued sleeping. But by the third time, she stirred awake, shivering a little. Cubby remained fast asleep beside him, but Mama Bear seemed unable to rest properly. She turned slightly, trying to avoid Quilly's spines, but no matter how many times she adjusted, Quilly was still a hedgehog with spines that couldn't be changed. As dawn approached, Quilly blinked his eyes open and noticed that Mama Bear had not slept well. His heart ached. He didn't want to bother anyone, let alone make someone uncomfortable because of him. The sun slowly rose, its first rays slipping through the cracks in the leaves, casting a gentle light over the bear's den. Cubby stretched, letting out a long yawn before rubbing his eyes and glancing at Quilly. "Did you sleep well?" Cubby asked, his voice still drowsy but as cheerful as ever. Quilly hesitated for a moment, then smiled softly. "It was okay." Cubby blinked, as if realizing something. He gently patted Quilly's head with his large, soft bear paw. "You're a wonderful friend, Quilly, but maybe you just need a different kind of hug." The words weren't spoken with judgment or sadness, yet they left Quilly still. He knew Cubby didn't want to hurt his feelings, but the truth remained: the thick fur of a bear was not the answer. Quilly lowered his head slightly, his heart tightening. He had hoped so much that this would be the hug for him, but it seemed that he still had to keep searching. As he left the bear's den, Quilly lifted his gaze to the vast blue sky. The clouds drifted lazily, unburdened by worries. A soft breeze rustled through the trees, whispering encouragement through the rustling leaves. Quilly clenched his tiny paws. He hadn't found the hug meant for him just yet, but he would not give up. The sky over Everhugs deepened into a dusky purple as the sun set behind the towering trees. The last golden rays of light shimmered on the small brook winding through the forest, casting dancing reflections upon the water. The air turned cool, carrying the faint scent of pine and wildflowers. Quilly sat on a smooth rock near the forest's edge, his round eyes gleaming with thought. All day, he had wandered from place to place, trying everything he could to find a hug, only to be met with kind but regretful rejections. His heart felt heavy as he thought of Cubby and Fuzzle. They were good friends, yet neither could hold him without getting hurt. The night breeze swept past, gently brushing against the spines on Quilly's back. He lifted his gaze to the sky, where the stars had begun to twinkle, and there, perched on the tallest branch in the forest, was Wiz, the wise old owl, silently watching over everything. Wiz was different from the other creatures of the forest. He never rushed about playing or running. He sat still on his ancient tree branch, his golden eyes deep with knowledge, as if they held all the secrets of the woods. He knew where every stream led, when the sweetest fruits ripened, and even the ancient stories that no one else remembered. Quilly took a deep breath and slowly stepped toward the base of the tree where Wiz rested. He tilted his head up, his voice quiet but filled with hope. Wiz ... The old owl turned his head, his eyes glimmering under the moonlight. "Ah, I didn't expect a little visitor at this hour. What brings you here, little hedgehog?" Quilly hesitated for a moment, then gathered his courage and asked, "How can I get a hug?" Wiz blinked, as if carefully considering the question. Then he gently fluffed his feathers and spoke in a voice as soft as the whispers of the night. "Do you know about roses, Quilly?" Quilly tilted his head slightly. "Yes, roses are beautiful and smell wonderful, but they also have thorns." Wiz nodded, his eyes filled with quiet satisfaction. "Exactly. Roses have thorns, yet people still cherish them because of their beauty and fragrance. No one avoids them just because of a few small thorns. On the contrary, they treasure them even more." Quilly fell silent for a moment, trying to grasp the meaning behind Wiz's words. "So, you mean that even though I have spines, I can still be loved?" Wiz gently nodded, his gaze kind yet deep. "Every creature is born with its own value. You just haven't discovered yours yet." Quilly stared at Wiz, a warm but unfamiliar feeling rising in his chest. But then, he lowered his head slightly, his voice growing softer. "But what is my value? I'm not fragrant like a rose, not soft like Cubby, not quick like Fuzzle. All I have are these spines that everyone is afraid of." Wiz didn't answer right away. He tilted his head slightly, as if observing Quilly for a long moment, looking deep into him. Then he smiled, speaking as gently as the night breeze. "Sometimes, value isn't found in what you have, but in how you use it. Have you ever thought that maybe your spines aren't something that separates you from the world, but a gift yet to be discovered?" Quilly blinked, his mind spinning with the question, a gift? But how could these spines be something good? He didn't have an answer yet. But there was one thing he was sure of. He would keep searching. The sky over Everhugs darkened as heavy clouds swallowed the moonlight, signaling an approaching storm. The once gentle and cool air of the forest was now replaced by freezing gusts that howled through the branches. The trees rustled, whispering among themselves about the fierce winds to come. Golden leaves were swept into the air, twirling before they finally tumbled onto the damp ground. Quilly lay curled beneath the old oak tree, his round little eyes watching lightning streak across the sky. The wind whistled through the spines on his back, cold and biting. He shivered slightly. Storms always carried a strange loneliness, making the once lively forest feel eerily quiet. The other creatures had already found safe shelter with their families. Only he remained here, alone. Suddenly, amidst the roaring winds, Quilly heard a tiny, weak cry from somewhere nearby. "Chirp! Help! Help me!" He jolted upright, his sharp ears perking to listen. The voice was trembling, frightened, almost swallowed by the howling storm, but Quilly recognized it immediately. It was Chirpy, the smallest baby bird in the forest. Quilly dashed out from his hiding spot, his short legs splashing through freshly formed puddles. The wind was so strong it made him stumble, but he didn't stop. He pushed through the swaying branches, finally coming to a halt when he saw a sight that made his heart ache. Amidst the muddy ground, a tiny nest lay abandoned and soaked. The twigs that had once formed Chirpy's cozy home had been blown from the highest branch, now scattered and broken, and next to it, Chirpy, so small, his feathers damp and clinging to his fragile body, shivered against the icy wind, his round eyes filled with fear. Quilly rushed over. "Chirpy, are you okay?" Chirpy looked up, his teary eyes glistening. I'm so scared. Quilly, my nest is gone. The wind is too strong. I can't fly." Quilly clenched his jaw, a surge of emotion stronger than any sadness he had ever known welling up inside him. He couldn't leave Chirpy here alone. He couldn't let him suffer in the cold. But then a question struck him. What could he do? He couldn't hold Chirpy the way Mama Bear held Cubby. Chirpy's delicate feathers were too thin. One touch from Quilly's spines might hurt him. But if he left Chirpy out here, the wind could sweep him away, or the cold might be too much for him to bear. Quilly tightened his tiny paws. Then suddenly, an idea sparked in his mind. He couldn't hug Chirpy with his arms, but maybe he could hug him in another way. Without hesitating another second, Quilly gently lay down on the ground, then slowly curled his body into a perfect circle. The sharp spines on his back faced outward, forming a sturdy barrier against the raging wind. But inside that circle, in the space at the center, was a small, safe haven, warm and sheltered from the storm. Quilly looked at Chirpy, his eyes filled with quiet reassurance. "Chirpy, crawl in here. I'll keep you safe." Chirpy blinked in surprise, but as another strong gust of wind whipped through, he didn't hesitate any longer. Slowly, he nestled inside the circle Quilly had formed. Immediately, he felt warmth radiating from Quilly, surrounding him like a protective shield. The very spines Quilly once thought were barriers between him and the world had now become a sturdy wall, shielding him from the icy winds. Chirpy tucked his head in, folding his small wings against his body, and let the safety of Quilly's embrace wrap around him. "Quilly." Chirpy's voice was soft, a gentle chirp amidst the stormy night. "Thank you. This is the warmest hug I've ever had." Quilly's eyes widened. He had waited so long for this moment. A hug, someone who accepted the warmth he had to give, even if it wasn't in the way he had once imagined. He didn't need to change himself. He didn't need to be softer or try to be anything else. He, just as he was, with his sharp spines, could bring warmth in his own way. And in the midst of the raging storm, Quilly no longer felt alone. The next morning, Everhug's forest awakened to a new kind of beauty after the storm. Raindrops still clung to the leaves, shimmering like tiny jewels under the soft morning sunlight. The air was fresh, carrying the mild dampness of the earth, blending with the crisp scents of fallen leaves. Quilly slowly opened his eyes, still feeling the gentle warmth of Chirpy curled up inside the circle he had created the night before. As he gazed at the little bird sleeping peacefully, a strange but wonderful feeling bloomed inside him. He had found a way to share his warmth, even if he couldn't hug someone in the usual way. From high above, Wiz watched silently, his deep golden eyes gleaming with quiet satisfaction. He lowered his head slightly and spoke in a warm, thoughtful voice. "Do you see now, Quilly? Every heart has its own way of loving." Chirpy stretched his tiny wings and tilted his head at Quilly. "Thank you, Quilly. I don't know what I would have done without you." Quilly said nothing. He simply smiled. News of Quilly protecting Chirpy quickly spread throughout the forest. Before long, Bunny Boo, Fuzzle, Cubby, and all their other friends arrived, eager to hear the story straight from Chirpy himself, their round eyes twinkling with excitement. You turned yourself into a nest? That's amazing. Bunny Boo bounced up and down, her long ears flopping with each hop. I never thought spines could be warm too. Fuzzle scurried around Quilly, his bushy tail swaying with curiosity. So that means you didn't have to change at all, Quilly. You're still you, but now everyone knows just how warm you really are. Cubby let out a booming laugh, giving Quilly a hearty pat on the back. I told you, you're an amazing friend. Quilly looked at the familiar faces gathered around him, and his heart swelled with something warmer than even the morning sun. Once upon a time, he had thought he needed to change, that without soft fur, a warm body like Cubby's, or gentle arms like Bunny Boo's, he would always be alone. But now, he understood that wasn't true. He didn't need to be like anyone else. Suddenly, Fuzzle perked up, his eyes shining with excitement. Hey, I've got a great idea. If Quilly can protect Chirpy with his spines, then he can definitely be a walking autumn leaf collection. Bunny Boo's eyes widened. You're right, Quilly. Do you want to try a new game? Quilly blinked. A game? Bunny Boo quickly picked up a bright golden maple leaf from the ground, tossed it into the air, and skillfully flicked it toward Quilly. The leaf drifted down and perfectly stuck onto his spines. Bunny Boo's eyes sparkled. It worked. Let's do more. Fuzzle hopped excitedly, gathering a handful of crimson and amber leaves, before tossing them one by one at Quilly. Each leaf landed on his spines, creating a stunning autumn display. Cubby clapped his paws, joining in with the others as they flung more leaves toward Quilly. In no time, Quilly's back had transformed into a breathtaking canvas of autumn, with golden, red, and orange leaves woven together like a natural cloak. Quilly stood still, feeling the leaves settle on him, but for the first time, he didn't feel anxious or afraid. He no longer had to worry about his sharp spines. They were no longer a barrier separating him from others, but had instead become part of a fun game, something that made him special in his own way. Bunny Boo stepped back a little, admiring the result before exclaiming, "Wow, Quilly, you look like a tiny autumn tree now." Fuzzle squinted with excitement. "A walking tree, your autumn Quilly." The whole forest erupted in cheerful laughter. Quilly gently touched the leaves on his back, feeling his heart swell with joy. For the first time, he truly believed he belonged here, that he was no longer alone. Quilly was savoring this newfound happiness with his friends. Bunny Boo and Fuzzle continued their leaf-tossing game, turning his back into a vibrant autumn masterpiece. The sound of laughter echoed through the forest, filling Quilly with a sense of happiness he had never known before. Just then, Cubby, the round little bear cub, waddled over, his face scrunched up as if he were facing a very serious problem. He plopped down on a nearby rock, stretching his short arms behind his back and groaning. "Oh, it's so itchy." Bunny Boo paused, blinking her big round eyes. "What's wrong, Cubby?" Cubby sighed, shaking his head. "My back has been itchy since this morning. I tried scratching it with my claws, but it's not helping at all." Fuzzle hopped over, his fluffy tail swishing with curiosity. "Why don't you ask Mama Bear to help?" Cubby groaned. rolling onto his back dramatically. She's busy cleaning up after the storm, and besides, she doesn't scratch hard enough. Ugh, I need something sharper, stronger, something that can really scratch my back properly. Quilly, who had been standing nearby, listened carefully and thought for a moment. He looked down at the spines on his back, and his eyes lit up slightly. The very things he once thought were a burden, maybe this time they could be useful. He stepped forward hesitantly. "Cubby, maybe I can help you." Cubby blinked. "Help? How?" Quilly smiled softly, shaking his body so the golden autumn leaves on his back fell away, revealing his sturdy spines beneath. "With these, I can rub my back against yours, and maybe it'll help with the itch." Cubby's eyes widened, as if he had just discovered a hidden treasure. "Really? Let's try it right now, Quilly." Without hesitation, Cubby turned around and sat down on the ground, his short legs swinging excitedly. Quilly carefully stepped closer, gently pressing his back against Cubby's thick fur. Slowly, he began to move, letting his spines glide over Cubby's itchy spots. Immediately, Cubby shivered, his eyes squeezing shut in bliss. "Oh, that's perfect. Amazing. Quilly, you're the best back scratcher I've ever met." He wiggled happily, enjoying the wonderful relief that Quilly's small spines provided. Fuzzle and Bunny Boo giggled beside them as they watched Cubby sway back and forth like a tiny boat on gentle waves. Bunny Boo's eyes sparkled with amazement. "Wow, so Quilly has another special ability after all." Fuzzle nodded enthusiastically. "He's not just great at protecting Chirpy, he's also a fantastic back scratcher. That's so useful." Cubby, completely lost in his comfort, sighed happily. "I hereby declare Quilly the official back-scratching expert of the forest. From now on, whenever I get itchy, I'm coming straight to you." Quilly laughed, feeling warmth spread through his heart. He had spent so long worrying that his spines would push others away, that they would make him unlovable. But now, the very thing he had once feared was making him special, helping the friends he cared about. Fuzzle playfully jumped onto Bunny Boo's shoulder and grinned. So now, he's not just Autumn Quilly, he's also Quilly, the back-scratching expert. No one else in the forest can do what he does. The sun had risen high in the sky, casting its golden rays over Everhug's forest. The air, fresh and cool from the previous night's storm, felt cleaner than ever. The green leaves shimmered as they swayed in the breeze, still glistening with the last remnants of morning dew. Small streams of water trickled between moss-covered rocks, their gentle burbling adding to the peaceful melody of the forest. Quilly was still enjoying the joy of his newfound purpose with his friends. Bunny Boo and Fuzzle continued tossing leaves, transforming his back into a breathtaking autumn canvas once more. Laughter rang through the trees, and Quilly felt happier than ever before. Just then, Cubby, the big, round bear cub, slowly waddled over again, looking distressed, as if he were facing yet another great dilemma. He plopped down on a nearby rock, stretching his short arms behind his back and grumbling. "Oh, it's so itchy." Bunny Boo paused mid-throw, blinking curiously. "What's wrong, Cubby?" Cubby sighed, shaking his head. "My back has been itchy all morning. I tried scratching it with my claws, but it just won't go away." Fuzzle hopped over, his fluffy tail swishing with curiosity. "Why don't you ask Mama Bear to help?" Cubby groaned, rolling onto his back on the rock. "She's busy cleaning up after the storm, and besides, she doesn't scratch hard enough. Ugh, I need something sharper, stronger, something that can really scratch my back properly." Quilly, who had been standing nearby, suddenly listened more intently, deep in thought. He looked down at the spines on his back, and a small light of realization flickered in his eyes. The very spines he had always thought were a burden. Maybe, just this once, they could actually be useful. He stepped forward hesitantly and asked, "Cubby, maybe I can try helping you?" Cubby blinked. "Help? How?" Quilly smiled softly and gave his body a little shake, letting the golden autumn leaves fall from his back, revealing his sturdy spines underneath. "With these, I can rub my back against yours, and maybe it'll help with the itch." Cubby's eyes widened as if he had just discovered a hidden treasure. "Really? Let's try it right now." Quilly, without hesitation, Cubby turned around and sat on the ground, his short legs swinging excitedly. Quilly carefully stepped closer, gently pressing his back against Cubby's thick fur. Slowly, he began to move, letting his spines glide over Cubby's itchy spots. Immediately, Cubby shuddered, his eyes squeezing shut in pure bliss. "Oh, that's perfect. Amazing. Quilly, you're the best back scratcher I've ever met." He wiggled happily, fully enjoying the wonderful relief that Quilly's small spines provided. Fuzzle and Bunny Boo giggled beside them as they watched Cubby sway back and forth like a tiny boat on gentle waves. Bunny Boo's eyes sparkled with amazement. "Wow, so Quilly has another special ability after all." Fuzzle nodded eagerly. "He's not just great at protecting Chirpy, he's also a fantastic back scratcher. That's so useful." Cubby, completely lost in his comfort, sighed happily. "I hereby declare Quilly the official back-scratching expert of the forest. From now on, whenever I get itchy, I'm coming straight to you." Quilly laughed, warmth spreading through his heart. He had spent so long fearing that his spines would drive others away, make them afraid of him. But now, the very thing he had once feared was making him special, helping the friends he cared about. Fuzzle playfully leapt onto Bunny Boo's shoulder and grinned. So now, he's not just Autumn Quilly, he's also Quilly the back-scratching expert. No one else in the forest can do what he does. The whole forest burst into cheerful laughter. Quilly no longer felt out of place. He didn't need to change himself to be loved. He just needed to be exactly who he was, a little hedgehog with sharp spines, but also one full of warmth in his own way. The sun slowly dipped behind the tall trees, casting a golden-orange glow over Everhug's forest. A gentle breeze drifted through, carrying the sounds of Quilly and his friends' laughter through the trees. From that day on, Quilly never felt lonely again. He didn't need to change himself, didn't need to have soft fur or warm arms to love and be loved. He had found his own way to bring warmth to those around him. And so, Quilly's journey ended with a hug, not in the way he had once imagined, but in a way that was whole and meaningful in its own special way. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to Moonlitwest to hear more heartwarming and adorable stories. Stay warm and sleep well. May your dreams be sweet, and may every heart find love in its own special way.